Hey everybody, good morning. Happy Friday. I hope you're doing well this wonderful morning. It's beautiful outside. I'm having a great time. Uh, Welcome back to G&G Live, which is where we open our virtual doors to discuss some interesting and nuanced legal topics that don't always get put in the light of day. I am here with Michelle Green, our founder and owner, to talk about the basics of buying and selling a business. It's a popular transaction this time of year. So I wanted to go through it so you know what to expect if this is a journey that you see in your future. Michelle started G&G Law about 10 years ago. Can you believe it? In 2011, after discovering firsthand that businesses were being underserved by the legal market. She experienced this firsthand as one of the founders and owners of Next Step Test Preparation just after graduating from law school. Now, while growing G&G Law, she gained a lot of great experience to bootstrap Next Step from a two-person tutoring company into a multi-million-dollar online learning company, which culminated, relevant to this live stream, in an 8-figure merger and acquisition deal. She's been through this before and she knows what to expect. And our legal clients benefit from her unique experience that she gained while wearing two hats, both as the legal counselor for Next Step and as the owner of Next Step. Two sides of one coin. With that, we have, as always, our quick little disclaimer that this video is only for educational purposes. It's not being catered to any particular viewer, or your business. Watching this video doesn't make an attorney-client relationship between us, and thus there's no confidentiality that applies during this video or anything that you share during the chat. Speaking of the chat, if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to bring up, feel free to type them down there. I'll be monitoring that and replying. And if we get any good ones, we might just take them live at the end of the stream. I think that's just about everything. So I'm going to get out of the way and let Michelle handle it from here.
Yes, thanks, Ian. That was fantastic. A great intro. I'm really excited about this particular live stream. Buying and selling businesses is one of my favorite projects. I say that a lot during a lot of live streams, but this truly is. It's just so much fun because there is a process, there's a roadmap in place that our clients really appreciate that we can sort of make clear to them. But on the other hand, it does involve, every client is different, and it involves a level of strategic thinking and analysis that is really fun for me as the lawyer. And we've worked with a lot of different M&A. So M&A is mergers and acquisitions. So a fancier way of saying buying or selling a business. We try to go with the basic, easy to understand language, but we'll throw some of that other vocabulary in too. But we've worked with a lot of M&A clients over the years, including, for some examples. So one big one, we had the opportunity to work on a 9-figure acquisition in the cannabis industry when one of our clients' parent companies was acquired. So it's kind of a fun experience for us to be involved in even going beyond that small and mid-sized market to those larger markets. We've also, Ian mentioned actually my personal life acquisition where I was the co-founder and also performed that legal role in the acquisition for my education company that I had before and during while I was running G&G Law. On the other hand, we've helped with the sale or acquisition of many smaller mom and pop businesses too. And we've been involved in deals ranging from $50,000 to multi-million-dollar deals in all sorts of industries, from the restaurant industry, food service, education, professional services, construction, health and wellness. I mean, recently we did some deals with an interior design business. We did a deal involving a produce business, landscape architecture. They're all really fun. There's a lot of transactions where the business owner is selling, passing the business down to a family member or selling the business to valued employees. I think we're seeing that especially lately now with the pandemic. I know from personal experience, business owners are getting a little tired. It's been a lot to manage a business through a pandemic, but it's also a great time to start a business or to introduce new ideas to a business because the world is changing so much and so quickly. So a win-win when owners are selling to employees right now. Also, a lot of transactions where someone wants to begin their entrepreneur journey by purchasing an established business. So whether that looks like a traditional search funder or somebody who graduated from an MBA program and doesn't want that finance job where they're just staring at spreadsheets all day. Like they want to dig in from the beginning as an entrepreneur operator and all the facets of running a business, which I love those kind of people. They're my people. And also same idea, like people who were early employees at a startup, so saw a startup journey and then got a cool equity buyout from that acquisition and now want to go do their own thing. They're fun to work with too. And then we have some clients who are already running a business and part of their business strategy is to go out and grow their business by acquiring other businesses in the same industry and grow their business that way. And we've worked with that and that's fun. And this variety keeps these projects fun and interesting. And as Ian mentioned, it was in the disclaimer, so most people probably tuned it out, although Ian was really, really engaging during that disclaimer. We can't provide official legal advice during a live stream because every client has different circumstances. So I just want to keep that in mind. It's especially true when it comes to buying or selling a business. And because of that, this live stream is really intended to be geared towards buying and selling a business 101. So mostly, for people who haven't gone through the process before and really want to understand the basics of it. But feel free to let us know in the comments if you have sort of like your experience and you have higher level questions and you want us to cover those in the future, in future live streams, because we're always doing these live streams and we're happy to give people what they want. So that being said, this is my personal merger and acquisition story of having the business that I was a co-founder of being acquired. So it's always nice to be able to use images that you know that you have the rights to. So that's my husband, John, and there's a baby there, Bear. He's not such a baby anymore. And when I was putting the slide together, actually, I asked John if I could use his image because it's important to have those image rights. And he said, sure, as long as I'm looking good. And I said, well, you always look good, honey. But in this picture, you also look stressed. And so does the baby a little bit. But that's the point because it gets across the message that I want to get across, which is selling a business is really, 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 really stressful. John agreed, but he also pointed out at least Bear gets to go to college. So we had a really great outcome of our business sale, but I do want to point out that it is stressful. So as Ian mentioned, John and I had co-founded another business. We ended up selling it to a private equity company in 2018. It was exciting, but due diligence is a beast. I always knew due diligence was a beast, from the legal end, from that end of it. But when you are actually the business person involved, it can take over your entire life and leave little time for doing anything else, even important things like, oh yeah, we still have to run a business on top of going through this. And the deal process is expensive too. So during this process, we hired another big law firm for the transaction, in addition to my firm. And shopping around for a lawyer, we interviewed a bunch of people and the estimates were all at least $100,000 for the legal fees for this deal. So it's expensive. And then the process was really around the clock in terms of time and energy. Now, that's not the case for every single size deal at G&G Law. We pride ourselves on efficiency. So our goal is to use the amount of legal services that makes sense for the size of the deal. But still, something to keep in mind as we go through the process of how you actually go through the process of buying or selling a business. You don't want to go through that whole process if the deal is not going to end up going through. So sometimes the buying or selling a business ends up, it's not going to work. The parties decide, no, I don't actually want to do this. Keep in mind that you want, if that's going to happen, if the deal's not going to go through, you want to figure that out as soon as possible. So as we go through this presentation and I lay out the steps for the process of buying and selling a business, keep in mind that those steps are there for a reason, and we want to help you through that process of figuring out if this is actually going to go through, so you're not wasting time, energy, money, etc. for no reason. Hopefully it goes through though, and then you get the fun part of, if you're the buyer, being a business owner, running a new business, and if you're the seller, hopefully meeting your goals and having that be a lucrative process. All right, jumping into the questions. And this is one that we see a lot. Do I even need a lawyer to buy or sell a business? And surprise, my answer is yes. Highly, highly recommend that you include a lawyer in the process. And here's 5 reasons. There's more. But first, you definitely want to make sure that you are understanding yourself, the terms, risks, and liabilities. So there's a lot of moving parts in the process, and you need somebody who can be there to explain everything that's going on and what it all means. And going into number 2, how you can protect yourself. So whether it's in the paperwork, whether it's in the actions you take, what can you do to make sure that your confidential information is remaining confidential? What can you do to make sure that if you're buying a business, that the person that you're buying the business from doesn't just set up shop right next door and open up a new competing business, that kind of stuff. And there's a lot that goes into that. A lawyer also helps with making sure every step is taken care of. So you don't want to buy a business and then realize, whoa, the lease that we have for this business is actually still in the seller's name. That would be bad news. Oh, you don't actually have the permit from the city that you need to be able to run this business. That kind of stuff we can help make sure is all in place before you have the keys. Efficient process. As I mentioned before, it's not unusual for deals to fall apart. Given the time, expense, and energy involved in the purchase process, if it's not going to happen, you want to find that out as soon as possible so you're not wasting your time and money. And then ultimately, if you're the buyer of a business, you want to create this pathway to successful business ownership and operation. If you're buying it with a partner, do you have that partnership agreement, that operating agreement, whatever you need in place, so you know how you're going to work together to actually run the business? Do you have your employees in place? Do you all that type of thing, all those types of things that are key to the big job of being a business owner. So next, what are the steps to buy or sell a business? So this is really the meat of the steps. These are the 4 basic steps to buy or sell a business. Obviously, other steps come in, especially if you need financing, if you're getting a business loan, if you're bringing on investors, if you're buying a business with a partner. There are other steps involved. But here's the basics of what does every single transaction, what should it include? So the first step is entering into an NDA, or a non-disclosure agreement, to protect mostly the seller's confidential information, because the seller is going to disclose a lot of information about their business, and you want to make sure if you're the seller that you're protecting your business before you disclose that. That being said, the NDA is often mutual, protecting the buyer's confidential information as well. So before you even start exchanging a lot of information, most sellers especially want to enter into that NDA. Next, the letter of intent, which is referred to as an LOI, or you could call it the term sheet. So this is the step that we find that a lot of business owners who are rushing, or a lot of potential buyers who are rushing, sort of skip this step and think they can go straight to the purchase agreement. We highly recommend that you enter into a letter of intent or term sheet before moving forward to the next steps of the process. So what these do, the LOI or term sheet, it lays out the primary terms of the acquisition. And this is where you want to include as many terms of the acquisition as possible. So everybody's on the same page from the beginning. And this is really where we get into that efficiency of the process. Because if there's a certain term such as the buyer wants the seller to remain on to answer questions or be a consultant, that type of thing, and the seller is thinking, nope, I'm leaving, I'm selling this business and I'm out of here, I'm never thinking about it or talking about it again. If that's going to be a deal breaker for this deal, then you want to know that as soon as possible before you get into everything else, because you're just wasting everybody's time. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but going through the rest of the process helps explain why that's the case. So the next step is due diligence. And due diligence is the process where the buyer obtains documents and information from the seller to fully understand the business financials, operations, risks, and liabilities. And this is also where the buyer sort of dives in and looks at this information and also says, okay, you have these contracts in place with other entities. What needs to be done to make sure those contracts transfer over to us, especially the lease? So you have a lease in place. How do we transfer the lease over to us? And you can get those steps situated before you actually get to closing. So when you get to closing, everything is ready to go in the business. And then the purchase agreement. So that's where you negotiate and draft a purchase agreement and other necessary documents. It includes all the terms of the transaction. And then once you sign it, it's sort of and enter into all those other steps. That's what effectuates the acquisition, and it's done. Going into sort of, we could talk about all these different steps of the process at length. But I think that the letter of intent and due diligence, that's where things really get glossed over. Highly recommend that letter of intent include all of the terms that you want to have in the deal, because the due diligence process, that's where it gets really, really in depth, where the buyer is requesting, this huge list. They want to know every contract the business has ever entered into, and look at them and look at all the tax returns, all the financials, all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot to hand over from both like sort of showing what's going on in the business standpoint, and also a lot of time and energy involved. One thing about the letter of intent and term sheet, overall, like it has the purchase price in it, it has the terms of the acquisition, like, whether the seller enters into a non-compete, whether there's a consulting or employment relationship going forward after the deal. But those terms are not binding. The only binding provisions in the letter of intent are the confidentiality provision, so the non-disclosure portion of the letter of intent. And then also there's almost always an exclusivity provision where the buyer and seller agree on a certain amount of time. Maybe 6 months is typical, some sort of amount of time where the buyer will not offer the business for sale to anyone else. So then that seller, the buyer has the seller won't offer the business to sale for anyone else. And so that buyer has that reassurance of while they go through that due diligence process, that nobody else is going to come in and snatch up the business in the meantime. Lots that we could go into there, but just getting the outline and the basics I find is really, really helpful. That, you start with that non-disclosure, then you start talking about purchase price and the reasoning behind it, but you don't show all of the documents just yet. Then you enter into that letter of intent with all of the terms as you anticipate them. Then you do the due diligence, which is like making sure that the financials that were stated at the beginning is actually backed up by the documents and information. Make sure everything is in order. There's not too many risks. It's kind of like if you think about in a real estate transaction, the due diligence is like the home inspection portion, just seeing that there's nothing majorly wrong. And the purchase agreement is sort of self-explanatory. The final contract that has all of the terms that everybody negotiates and enters into. We found if there's a really, really good letter of intent in place, the negotiation process for the purchase agreement is a lot shorter and quicker. If there's not that letter of intent in place, then the negotiation for the purchase agreement can really go on for quite a long time. All right, when should I hire a lawyer to buy or sell a business? And I would say as soon as possible. The best case scenario is to have somebody on hand, so a lawyer helping you out before you sign anything. So I think what's most typical is when the parties are entering into that NDA, that's usually the first contract that the parties are signing. It's a good idea to have a lawyer draft or review that NDA before you're signing it and make sure everything's in place. And then you have that lawyer available to help with the next step, which is drafting the LOI or term sheet. Okay, our approach to helping clients who are buying or selling a business. So our approach is, like I said before, this can be quite an involved process, but obviously it does not make sense to spend $100,000 on legal fees when you're buying or selling a business for $50,000. That would be absolutely ridiculous, right? So the amount of fees that you spend on a lawyer for this process really have to be proportionate to the risk that you're entering into. But then the question is, well, how can you sort of make the process more efficient and change up what you do client by client? So one thing I recommend is if you're looking to save money, don't do it by skipping that LOI or term sheet step. I know it's tempting, but we've really found that it doesn't actually help in the long run. It actually causes people to spend more money on legal fees in the long run if you're skipping that step. Where we have found that we could help with efficiency is through that due diligence step. So due diligence is a process where that's where the lawyer's time can really, really be increased, because if the lawyer is asking for the documents and then having to follow up and ask over and over again and keep track of the list and see what's missing and then ask for it again and then review everything, that's a lot. On the other hand, we found, clients don't even know where to start with due diligence. They don't know what to ask for, what to look for. So what we can do is sort of open up that process to them. We have a list of what we recommend that you ask for due diligence. We also have a conversation so that you're asking for documents and information that are really specific to your business and your type. And then we can be as much involved or as little involved in that process. So the key thing is really getting that list together. And then if you have more time than money, then the client can be the one to manage that list and follow up with the seller and keep that process going. On the other hand, if you just don't have the time available, you're already running a business and you need somebody to help you manage, or you have a lot at stake here, there's a lot of risk and liability and a lot that needs to be reviewed, then we can be more involved in that due diligence process. So that's really the two ways to increase our efficiency, is to make sure that you're saving time, and especially lawyer time in the negotiation process, by getting all the terms figured out as soon as possible, and really working together on that due diligence to make sure, what do you just need to learn and know how to do, and then you can take the time to do it, versus what do you want the lawyers to actually handle. That's our approach. How much does it cost? So what are the lawyer's fees for a merger and acquisition? So if you have checked out our website or heard anything about us before, our mission is to make legal services accessible to small businesses. One way that we do that is we do charge flat fees as much as possible. But unfortunately, with the buying or selling a business process, there is no way to predict, how long it's going to take, what's going to be needed, and what the fees are going to be in advance. So we can't offer flat fees for that. So what we do is we charge by the hour. And the way that our engagement, our relationship is set up with our clients is we require an evergreen retainer, where it's a certain amount of money. Usually the retainer is either 10 hours of our time or 20 hours of our time, depending on how involved the process is going to be. And then we bill against that retainer at our hourly rate, and then require you to refill that back up to that level that we agreed on every month. So you can see exactly what work we're doing every single month and how we're moving things along, and keeping that process going. Yeah, and I guess a typical. I would say the typical sort of low end of buying or selling a business. Rarely we've done it for under $5,000 total. If there is a lot of due diligence involved and there's a lot of negotiation and the purchase price is pretty high, it can get up to, for a multi-million-dollar deal, it can get up to $20,000, and even quite significantly more if you're in the 8 figures or more. But it really just depends on what's involved. And how long does it take to buy or sell a business? This is another one where the timeline really does vary. I would say, just to give some examples of ranges, getting it done from beginning to end in 3 months is doable, but that's really pretty fast and intense. And then maybe beyond 6 or 7 or months or so, then it's probably getting a little bit stale, and perhaps there's some problems coming into it for why it's taking that long. So I guess if I have to do a guesstimate, probably 3 to 6 months is sort of the typical time frame for going through this process, although tons of variables, but depending on what kind of business and how much the purchase price is and the level of negotiation and how eager all of the parties are to get it done, and is there a deadline, like trying to get it done by the end of the year, that type of stuff. So that is the basics for buying or selling a business and how the lawyers at G&G Law can help. Thank you so much for watching. And definitely learn more about how we can help your business get going and keep growing. Check out our website, gglawoffices.com. We have tons of information there. There's also a contact form there, so if you want to reach out and ask more questions, please fill that out. Set up a consultation if you are going to be going through this process soon. I love to help clients with that process and would love to talk to you about it.
Yep, and I think that's gonna be a wrap, everybody. Thank you all for watching. If you are catching this later, don't worry. This will be here on Facebook. It's also going to be uploaded on YouTube. So you can catch it later in either of those places if there was information here that you saw that you wanted to get in on, but like didn't quite have time to take all the notes that you wanted to take with your little steno pad. It'll be available for you to come back and revisit. And like Michelle said, if you have any questions, go on our website, fill out the contact form. You'll be talking to yours truly, and I would love to hear from each and every one of you. So, yeah, go do that. You can give us a call, reach out on our website. You can answer, like post your comments here on Facebook, and I'll be seeing those and getting back to those as well. And I think that's just about all we got. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks, everyone.
yes. Thank you. Have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend.